On This Week in Enterprise Tech, we have Mr. Brian Chee, Mr. Curtis Frankel back on the show today. Now, FTC is punishing robocallers. Apple is working on a search engine, and Okta is leaking source code. Plus, we're going to discuss Apple's new SOS service. To finish out the year, we have enterprise wish lists for Santa. That's right, all the things you wish you had for your organization or even as a consumer, we have it on our list. You definitely shouldn't miss it. TWiT on the set.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is TWiT, This Week in Enterprise Tech, episode 524, recorded December 23rd, 2022. Making a list? Checksumming It Twice. This episode of This Week in Enterprise Tech is brought to you by NordLayer. NordLayer is a secure network access solution for your business. Join more than 7,000 fully protected organizations by going to nordlayer.com/twit to get your first month free when purchasing an annual subscription. And by OnLogic. OnLogic is helping innovators around the world solve their most complex technology challenges using OnLogic industrial computers, which are engineered for reliability, even in environments that would challenge or destroy traditional computer hardware. Learn more and find out about OnLogic's 30-day risk-free hardware trial by visiting onlogic.com/twit. Welcome to TWiT, This Week in Enterprise Tech, the show that's dedicated to people like you, the enterprise professional, the IT pro, and that geek who just wants to know how this world's connected. I'm your host, Louis Maresca, your guide through the big world of the enterprise. It's our holiday episode. That's right, the last TWiT of the year. And what better way to celebrate it? With friends. That's right. They are the professionals, the experts that have been guiding us through the enterprise world this year, starting with their friend and colleague, Mr. Brian Chee, net architect at Skyfiber, board member and all-around tech geek. Cheebert, great to have you here, my friend. How is your holidays going? You're all set for them?
As much as I can. I added a whole bunch of blinky lights to the house and my little blow-up coffee mug. Am I muted again? No, I'm not. Okay, sorry. But yeah, it's been a mad rush, working things with the MakerFX Makerspace and the conferences and things that we've been doing. It's felt like a real mad rush to the holiday seasons, but that's all right. I got to be creative. I made some really cool gift certificate-like things for a friend up in the Carolinas, and it's fun being creative and doing only the things I really want to do, which is cool.
Isn't that fun? I can't wait to someday to be able to retire, be able to do stuff like that, or at least not have any kids in the house. Let's see how that goes. Now, you guys are having some holiday weather down there as well in Orlando, right?
Oh yeah, I've got the hose bibs trickling, and I'm gonna set up the pool pump so it runs overnight, because apparently sometime around 8 a.m. tomorrow morning it's going to drop down to like 31 degrees Fahrenheit. Which is pretty cold.
It's cold for Orlando, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, hopefully you are ready. Well, what better way to end the year as well than to have my friend and colleague, the man who has the pulse on the enterprise. That's right. He's Mr. Curtis Franklin, and he's senior analyst at Omdia. So great to have you back, Curtis. How are you, and how's your holiday going so far?
Let's see. I'm taking the pulse. No, it's. I'm doing well. It is a largely quiet time, trying to finish up some projects before the year ends, trying to get set up for the coming year, which promises to be all kinds of exciting. It's been nice looking back a little bit. I am fortunate in that I work on with a very good team of professionals, and I'm very pleased about that. So it's been a nice year to talk to a lot of people, reach some interesting conclusions about parts of the industry, and I think that in 2023 things are just going to get more exciting. So looking back with gratitude, looking ahead with excitement, and can't wait to have a conversation with you and Brian about the things we want to see.
That's right. That's right. That's coming up. Well, it's not only been a busy year in the enterprise, but it's been a busy week as well. And we wanted to end the year with a bang for our audience of subscribers, where there's lots to talk about here. Now, the FTC is after robocallers. Apple's working on a search engine. Okta is leaking data. Plus, we're going to discuss the new Apple SOS service. And if we have time, we'll also chat about Comcast and how they're sticking it to the less fortunate people who qualify for free internet. Not surprised there. But stick around, because we're going to finish the show with our enterprise wish list for Santa. That's right. All the things you wish you had in your organization or even as a consumer, we have it on our list. So stick around. There's lots to talk about on this year-end episode of TWiT. But first, this week's news blips. Google is the de facto standard for most people when it comes to searching. If you're more privacy-centric, you might use DuckDuckGo. But still, most of the users or even power users, use Google, with an honorable mention going to Bing, of course. However, there's might be some slowly things happening on the back end, servicing more relevant search data and metadata, but there's little has changed in search for a while. Now, what if I told you Apple has had ongoing efforts to develop search capabilities that actually might compete head-to-head with Google? Well, according to this 9 to 5 Mac article, Apple acquired an AI news startup called LaserLike in 2018 to help with these efforts. In fact, the people who started LaserLike were from Google. That's right. During his time at Apple, Venkachari reported to Apple's vice president of machine learning and artificial intelligence, John Ganandjara, a former Google executive. Now, Venkachari, he also expanded the headcount of search team at Apple, focusing on hiring several Google search employees. Now, unfortunately, Venkachari is heading back to Google. It's leaving a little bit of a gap at Apple, but Apple has not only a competitor, but it also has a partner type relationship with Google. In fact, Google pays Apple an estimated $18 billion to $20 billion per year to remain the default search engine on Apple devices. That's a lot of money. Now, even though there's a shift in staff for Apple, they're still looking to roll out some search possibilities, starting with their music and app stores in less than 4 years. Now, to me, this is a crowded area, I think. It's kind of a dense area, search set that is. Now, Salesforce has its own called U.com. It's an AI-powered search control. There's also now ChatGPT, which is its own paradigm that focuses on natural language processing and semantic search. But there is, of course, Bing, which uses the power of the graph to bring increased valuable metadata to your search. Now, the question is, what else can they bring to the table here? Now, what will it spark and maybe even impact people? So we'll have to think about this a little bit as Apple kind of focuses on the market and brings their search. We'll have to see what they're going to do.
Quantum computers in the wild are still scarce as hen's teeth, but in an unusual example of thinking ahead, technologically speaking, Congress passed, and on December 21st, President Biden signed into law the Quantum Computing Cybersecurity Preparedness Act, which has two parts that matter to most folks in the IT industry. An article at Dark Reading writes that the Office of Management and Budget is required to prioritize the switch over to post-quantum cryptography, or PQC, within a year of NIST issuing PQC guidelines. That means that by July 5, 2023, OMB should begin moving toward implementing the NIST-approved cryptographic algorithms to protect executive branch systems. Next, OMB has 1 year from the signing of the bill to send Congress a report outlining its PQC strategy. This outline will include asking for funds for the transition to quantum-safe systems and going into detail its cooperation and coordination with international standards organizations. Now, on November 18, OMB issued a directive for agencies to audit systems vulnerable to crypto-analytically relevant quantum computers, or CRQCs, by May 4th, 2023. And as an aside, if nothing else, quantum computers are generating more 3- and 4-letter acronyms than any technology I've seen lately. Now, if the agencies actually deliver the audits, it should help the agency, that's OMB, reach its deadlines. Now, this new law gives the OMB 6 months to work with the National Cyber Director and the Director of CISA to issue guidance on the migration of information technology to post-quantum cryptography. All of this is part of a significant set of actions begun years ago and continued by the current administration to prevent a scenario in which wide access to quantum computers, whenever that happens, renders existing privacy and security technologies obsolete. Here's hoping that it all works just as planned.
So I want to give a big thank you to Engadget for covering this story, and an even bigger thank you to the FCC for what is, in my opinion, one of the best possible Christmas gifts the federal government could give us. Because how many of you had a call that started off with, "We've been trying to reach you concerning your car's extended warranty"? Well, the FCC has proposed a $299,997,000 fine against, quote, "the largest robocall firm," unquote, "it has ever investigated." The regulator announced it would be FCC's largest fine ever and targets a firm that made over 5 billion calls in 3 months, enough to have called each person in the United States 15 times. The operation is run by Roy Cox Jr. and Michael Aaron Jones via their Sumco Panama company, along with other domestic and foreign entities. In July of this year, the FCC issued its first ever K4 notice and N2 order directing all U.S. telephone providers to stop carrying traffic related to the car warranty scam calls. The result is a massive 99% drop in the volume of such calls since June, according to the spam blocking app RoboKiller, according to the FCC. Well, the FCC proposed its largest ever fine because it found the robocallers met the criteria for, quote, egregious violations. Oh, I'm having trouble with my mouth today. Consumers describing the calls as incessant and harassment, and the robocallers using dirty practices like calling healthcare workers from spoofed hospital numbers. The firm also violated multiple FCC rules, like failing to identify the caller at the start of a message. In your calls, a message was opened with something like, "We've been trying to reach you concerning your car's extended warranty." I can't tell you how many memes I've seen all across the internet on this. Well, anyway, it would then prompt you to speak to a scam warranty specialist. RoboKiller advises users to avoid the calls in the first place if possible, not follow prompts, and above all, never provide personal information like banking details. Well, a very holiday story about the Grinch getting stomped on by the FCC, and who knows, maybe no more calls about extended warranties. I wish.
Past breaches continue to come and haunt some of our organizations. Now, according to the Bleeping Computer article, things might not be so great for Okta. Last month, the Lapsus ransomware group posted images showing it had obtained proprietary data from Okta and a provider of authentication services and identity access management solutions. Now, Okta officials said that the data was obtained after the threat actor gained unauthorized access the account of a, quote, third-party customer support engineer working for one of its sub-processors. And the company said the attempt to breach Okta was unsuccessful and that the access the hackers gained to the third-party account didn't allow them to actually create or delete users, download customer databases, or even obtain password data. The Lapsus members refuted this claim and noted that the screenshots indicated they had logged into the super user portal and status that they said gave them the ability to reset the passwords and multi-factor authentication credentials of 95 of Okta's customers. In August, Okta said that the hackers who had recently breached their security provider, Twilio, used their access to obtain information belonging to an unspecified number of Okta customers. Now, in September, Okta then revealed that the code repositories for Auth0, company acquired back in 2021, had also been accessed without authorization. Well, this week, disclosure from Okta adds insult to injury here that their private GitHub repositories contain software code for its Okta Workforce Identity Cloud service was accessed. It was copied after intruders gained access. Despite stealing Okta's source code, attackers did not gain unauthorized access to the Okta service or customer data, which is actually pretty good. It's been a difficult year for Okta, I think, with its series of security incidents and even bumpy disclosures here. Now, the internal email acquired by Bleeping Computer pledges a commitment to transparency. However, it took them a bit to finally post on the Okta security blog about this recent GitHub access. Now, let's hope organizations continue to take plays out of each other's playbook on transparency breaches. People deserve to know the status of their data and their services, and only the trustworthy services that is confident in itself seems to disclose first. Let's hope they all start being more transparent in the new year. Well, folks, that does it for the blips. But next up, we have the bites. But before we get to the bites, we do have to thank a really great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that's NordLayer. NordLayer safeguards your company's network and data. Now, we've all heard about the surge of ransomware attacks. We talk a lot about it on this show. Plus, our employees are choosing to work remotely, and business networks have become more valuable than ever and more vulnerable than ever. That's where NordLayer comes in, and it secures and protects remote workforces as well as business data. And it can even help you ensure security compliance. Now, with NordLayer, it's easy to start. It takes less than 10 minutes to onboard your entire business on a secure network. That's pretty fast. Now, you can easily add new members. You can create teams and private gateways, and you can even do things like IP allow listing, site-to-site connection, network segmentation, and setting up secure network access. So you can even go to nordlayer.com/twit and get 1 month free right now with the purchase of an annual subscription. Now, NordLayer is also easy to combine as it's completely hardware free and it's compatible with all major operating systems, allowing you to implement security features across all items and all teams. They have great features to support your teams. In fact, things like two-factor authentication, single sign-on, biometrics. They also have a service called Threat Block, smart remote access as well. NordLayer is easy to scale as you can choose a plan unique to your business requirements and your rate of growth. You'll have everything centrally in one place where you can check the server usage, monitor connections to your gateways, and you can even view an activity log of everything that's going on. Now, one NordLayer user said, "We're looking for an easy way to securely connect our remote workforce to our infrastructure. This is it. Awesomely quick, friendly, efficient support. Got us up and running in no time." Another user said, "Simple to install and operate, no funny business, and so fast that our teams didn't even notice they were using it." Now, most modern businesses are already adopting network solutions like SASE, Zero Trust, hybrid work security. NordLayer has all that and more. Now, don't leave your business vulnerable. Try NordLayer today and join more than 7,000 fully protected organizations. NordLayer. If you want to secure your business network, go to nordlayer.com/twit. Get your first month free when purchasing an annual subscription. That's nordlayer.com/twit. And we thank NordLayer for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, it's time for the bites. Now, when the iPhone 14 was released, Apple promised customers their revolutionary SOS via satellite service that would light up in the new devices in the coming months. Well, Apple has finally released their service. Now allows iPhones to contact emergency services or even share their location and status with emergency contacts via the satellite when they're in a place where standard cellular services are not available. Now, according to this Ars Technica article, the emergency SOS via satellite search works on all Apple's most recent flagship iPhone models, including iPhone 14, 14 Plus, 14 Pro, and Pro Max. You might actually notice it when you're in a place with no service and you're outdoors. Now, right now, it only supports messaging, no voice, because the amount of data that's actually required to send over the satellite. We'll get into that in a little bit. You may remember, we actually talked about this in past episodes. Apple actually made a deal with Globalstar to send up 24 satellites to create this operating service. Now, the message will be relayed to nearby emergency call centers called Public Safety Answering Point, or PSAPs, or if they have a best response location that's not equipped to handle text messages, Apple-trained emergency specialists who actually relay the message for you. So this is actually a really interesting service that they're standing up. Now, it's free for you for the first 2 years once you actually buy a new phone. But the question is, what will it cost after that? And how useful will it actually be? I want to bring my co-host back in. I want to start with you first, Brian, because you've used a lot of sat phones in the past. How useful will this be? Who's this for, and how useful will this be?
Okay, so first off, Globalstar has been around for a long time. And you got to think of it kind of like the SMS text messaging on a traditional cellular network. It uses a reduced bandwidth channel, and it can only send short messages. Well, not the end of the world. Part of those short messages have GPS location and an accurate clock. So that takes, away some of the requirements for the data. I've used it similar, I use the Iridium version with a small handheld unit, and I was actually sending text messages and actually sending tweets and waypoints from the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Worked great. Now, the only place the global star system doesn't work is the last degree or two at the top and bottom of the world. So if you're planning on planting a flag at the North or South Pole, it's not going to help you. But if you're just about anywhere else in the world, as long as you can see the sky, or, at least, more than just a teeny tiny little sliver in between the leaves of the deep Amazon jungle, you should be able to go and send information for help. And one of the cool things is it will also allow you to send location services with the Find My Phone service, which is going to be very cool. This is not going to make some of the people happy, like Garmin, who make a goodly amount of money selling emergency systems. But for those of us that only need to be able to call for help, say, for instance, when we're going through the Donner Pass and stuck in a snowstorm and we can't get out and we need help and there's no service, then it's, something great. In fact, I like this service enough, or at least I like the concept of service enough, that I'm probably going to pull the trigger on upgrading to an iPhone 14 or thereabouts a lot sooner than I thought I would. It's a good system. There are still lots and lots of areas in the United States and Europe and so forth, or definitely Canada, when you're driving between certain areas where there is zip for cell coverage. And being able to call for help, because, Murphy is always there. You're going to find a nail in the middle of nowhere. And suddenly you're going to open up your car trunk and find out, oh, my spare is flat too. So I think this is a great thing. Someday, maybe they'll open it up just a little bit more to allow you to send, things like, just reach the top of the Matterhorn. I'd love, here's something really cool. Being able to go and say what's happening and leave waypoints so people can watch your progress as you're, say, going up the Matterhorn or whatever's, could be a really cool feature. But for now, just being able to shout for help, even if you're out of cell coverage, is a pretty cool feature.
I agree. I'm kind of wondering, you've used the Iridium service before. Now, they're still out there. Obviously, there's 66 active satellites. I think they're running at 16, 18 megahertz. And the SOS service is running at a much higher range, which is the 2483 megahertz. I'm just curious, why do you think that Apple decided to spend all these billions of dollars to send up new satellites versus going and paying a company like Iridium to allow them to use them?
Probably long-term cost. Apple probably wants to do considerably more with those satellites than just sending short messages. And having control over it means there's other things. I'm going to imagine there's going to be some other services that Apple is going to be able to, make money on.
Right.
Could you imagine being able to track your friends in the deep forest as you're hiking, say the Sierras? That could be a really cool feature. And I'm sure Apple is going to try and monetize that.
Now, they've gotten to market first. Now, Curtis, I'm going to throw this to you because I feel like, offering this free, if you're a business, you're buying a bunch of iPhones for your employees, whether it's in transportation or whatnot, and you get this service for free for a couple of years, I feel like it could definitely impact the industry and move things forward. People almost become slightly dependent on the Apple service before it becomes kind of a paid service. Do you see this kind of impacting any part of the industry?
Oh, I really do. And I think that, as Brian said, where it becomes really critical are the people and the companies they work for who get away from urban centers. If you're just doing business, let's say in the corridors between Boston and New York in the Northeast, or along the Eastern Seaboard, it probably won't have a huge impact. But if you are doing business, if you travel even occasionally through the great swaths of the country where the cell towers are few and far between, this could have a huge impact. And think of it, being offered at no cost. The analog to me is what Tesla did with their superchargers. Buy a Tesla, get access to a charging network. Now with some of the, that was with the Model S, now with the Model 3, Model Y, others, you pay for it. But they had the ability to build out the network based on the premium products. And they were able to use the availability of that charging network to entice others to buy their cars. I think the same is going to be true with Apple. The iPhone is an incredibly successful phone worldwide. And it's an incredibly important part of Apple's revenue. So doing things that might tip the marginal buyer, those who have been on another platform and are ready to refresh and are trying to decide between, an Android device of some sort and an iPhone, this could make a huge difference. And from my perspective, I think it's wonderful. I have friends who do things like run ultra marathons where they're out running for 100 miles or more through the desert. I have friends who do extreme sports, and they are off in the hinterlands. And so having a service like this where they can either call for help or on a regular and predetermined basis send messages saying, I don't need help, that's big. And what it does, it expands Apple's market the same way that the Apple Watch Ultra expands their market. Realistically, does it compete against the various Garmin's for serious long-distance athletes? No. But it's a marginal product that does expand their market at the margins. And, those margins for a product like the iPhone are pretty big.
Right, indeed. They are. Well, I'm actually very interested to see what happens here because, I have some friends actually. Oh, well, look, what's that? What do you got over there, Brian?
This is the Garmin
shiny
InReach.
object.
Yeah, this is the InReach. This is what I've been using when I go, off into the wilds. But it's not cheap. I have to pay like $35-40 annually just for the privilege. And then when I activate it, if I'm going, cross country or whatever, I have to pay a monthly fee and I've got to pay a whole month. But it's really cool because a friend of mine that does, charitable work just bought a whole bunch of the small ones that are Bluetooth to your cell phone. So about half the price of that guy. And she wanted it so that if the cell networks and the landlines are down, that her people will have a way of requesting help, requesting resources and things like that. So having that in an iPhone device is going to be really useful for a lot of people that help with disaster relief.
It's definitely peace of mind for sure too. What I was saying before is I have a good friend that if you ever heard of paramotors, where they actually strap a motor to their back and go up with parachutes. It's not just fun. They have a race called the Icarus Paramotor Race, which is about several thousand miles over on the West Coast, and they fly in between really dead spots and over mountains and they could really use something like this for sure. And they're in pretty good space. Obviously, you're several thousand feet up in the air, sometimes up to 30,000 feet up in the air in these things, just kind of dangling there. And they can at least ask for help or send their location or whatever if they don't have cellular. So I definitely can see a lot of different applications for this for sure. Well, we do want to move on because we have another article and we want to do a little bit of, I would say, soapboxing on this one. So, Brian, I'm going to throw this to you because, Comcast seems to be sticking it to the less fortunate here.
Okay. So, first off, I don't work for Comcast. I don't work for their competitors. Well, I kind of do. I help with a wireless internet service provider in Honolulu, but Comcast isn't there. So, okay. Disclaimer over. So there is a program. It started long time ago. It's probably not too long after Graham Bell. And the idea is to close the digital divide, or at least attempt to, so that if you're someone that's having a lot of trouble making ends meet, someone that's typically on the food stamps program or something like that, there is a system called the Affordable Connectivity Program, ACP. And the idea is an extension on the what's we call used to be called the Freedom Lines. So if you were a food stamps recipient or welfare, you could apply through the FCC to go and get free telephony. In this case, it's the plain old telephone system. The industry called it Lifeline. Because the idea was you should be able to call 911 for help if something went wrong, even if you can't typically afford a traditional phone in your home. So the FCC took this actually, I think this is both the FCC and FTC, and created the Affordable Connectivity Program where you could have discounts or downright free on getting internet in your home. Now, the part where we're beating on Comcast is apparently the training that has been given to the Comcast operators has been suboptimal. Let's call it that. And in this case, a caller went and said, hey, this Affordable Connectivity Program is supposed to be available from people at Comcast, but yet Comcast is trying to sell me something else, and says, no, they don't know anything about that. So Comcast, quit being a Grinch. Some people are going to use some of that Christmas money that they got, and they want to be able to go and get internet. And if they go and use the checklist that the FCC has put out, so what I'm going to do is there is an Xfinity link, and we're going to that'll hopefully get into the show notes. It's basically an FAQ, and it goes and tells you what kinds of hoops you need to jump through in order to qualify for this. And it'd be great. So there we go. So that'll get into the show notes. Go and look at it. If you're having trouble affording internet, especially if you're on the WIC program or something like that, there's a good chance you might qualify for at least some help from the federal government. Now, don't let your ISP, all ISPs operating in the United States is supposed to be able to provide this service. I don't know all the ins and outs. There's a really huge discussion about it at Wispapalooza, the last one I was at. So it does exist. A lot of internet service providers will use federal money in order to expand their resources and expand their backbone. And that's some of the things that they need to be able to provide. They need to be able to provide this connectivity. So lots of things happening. It has especially gained a lot of traction during the pandemic when people needed it to be able to do schoolwork or work from home and things like that. So what I'm going to do is let's go and have a discussion. This is a long story. I'm not going to bother trying to read it all, but the impact of having even the have-nots, let's the people that are having trouble, being able to get connectivity can be a pretty big deal. So I'm going to throw it at, I don't know, heck, Lou, Kurt, who wants to chime in on, this could potentially have a huge amount of impact, especially for the people that are in the underserved communities. Don't you think?
No, I absolutely agree. This could have a tremendous impact. And we've seen the need when we have these stories like children from homes where the income is low, doing things like going and sitting on the curb in a McDonald's parking lot so they can camp on McDonald's Wi-Fi to do their schoolwork. Most schoolwork these days is done using the internet. I know many teachers who just assume that students will use something like Gmail or the Google Word, the Google Doc to get their assignments in. So while, yes, like driving and everything else, it's a privilege, the reality is to be part of our modern society, modern economy, things like internet access are required. It's good that we have these systems and these programs in place, but as anyone who has dealt with any government program will tell you, it is very rare for any level of government to have a set of forms that are completely easy to use and completely intuitive on how they should be filled out. This is especially true for those who might not have a lot of experience filling out government forms, filling out complex forms. So I do think it's an issue. Do I blame the ISPs? To a certain extent, yes. I mean, they know this is a government program. They know that people are going to want to take advantage of it. They should provide the training so that their customer-facing representatives will know what to do when people call in. And especially when there are cases where there could be a contradiction in eligibility or apparent eligibility. I know someone who qualifies for a program offered by another ISP. This is someone who is a senior, and because of the combination of age and income, they get a heavily subsidized rate on their internet access. It's wonderful because they're on a fixed income. It allows them to use more of that income for things like, food, medication that's required to keep them alive. So these are important programs. They're necessary programs, but it is incumbent on the ISPs to make sure that their customer service people are trained in how to deal with them, even if that involves hearing the magic words, identifying the program, and transferring the individual to a specialist who knows how to deal with it. That's a perfectly acceptable solution, but it's one that apparently Comcast, in this case, wasn't able to put into action.
Yeah, I want to just jump in here really quick because I feel like Comcast is one of those companies that doesn't necessarily train any layer of their customer service people to do the right thing or try to do the best they can for a customer. So I have been in many situations where they've stuck it to people who have low income and who don't, who move to areas that don't have Comcast and are still required to pay thousands of dollars of termination fees, who barely make any money. So I really dislike Comcast. I feel like I'm going to put more of the weight on their shoulders. But I do have a success story. I want to not end on a grinchy note. From the chat room, Kuops actually pulled out and told us that he was able to acquire a $15 a month service, LTE MiFi internet for his nephew, unlimited internet from PCs for people. Really great story. I mean, that's great for people who obviously don't necessarily know what they're paying for, or are able to have an income to be able to pay for more expensive services, because sometimes MiFis are fairly expensive. So I think that's great that he's able to get that. And I want to see more of those from some of these providers around the industry. Anything else from you guys?
No. We just, Comcast keeps stepping in it, so we'll keep we'll keep calling it out. Calling a spade a spade. Comcast needs to learn about customer service.
No question, but it should be noted that this is part of a raft of services that are available. With the weather that we're seeing in the nation this week, it's notable that in many places there are heating oil or natural gas subsidies to help people heat their home. There are subsidies for electric, for lots of utilities. And then we get to things that are very well known, like food stamps, which are essentially a subsidy for food, for especially mothers of infant children and families with small children. But in every case, in order to avoid fraud, and that's important because every time someone fraudulently goes after one of these subsidies, it takes money away from someone who deserves it. We sometimes succeed in making it more difficult than it should be for legitimate, we'll call them legitimate users of these programs to be able to access them. So it's a tough issue, but it's one that large corporations have the resources to solve these problems. They should invest those resources and get the solutions in place.
Agreed.
Hear, hear.
Hear, hear. Well, I think that ends on a good note. Thank you, Curtis. Well, folks, I think that does it for the bites. Next up, we have a great topic. We're going to go to our Santa Enterprise list. But before we get there, we do have to thank another great sponsor of this week in Enterprise Tech, and that's OnLogic. They probably no more than a few feet away from a personal computing device that's really changed your life. I know I have, right behind me here. There's an entire hidden world of computing that brings smart cities to life, driving sustainable agriculture and really revolutionizing the way virtually everything is made. And that's where you'll find OnLogic's distinct orange industrial and embedded computers. Really cool devices. Now, OnLogic is the first choice in industrial computing for innovators around the world who need computing power that can survive and thrive where traditional hardware might actually fail. Now, OnLogic designs and creates computing solutions that can fit in the palm of your hand while empowering everything from advanced robotics and AI to manufacturing automation, digital media solutions, and smart agricultural technologies. Now, OnLogic computers are passively cooled and ventless. They protecting internal components from dust and other airborne contaminants, resulting in completely solid-state devices to protect against shock and vibration, even sound. Some good things there, low sound. Other design features protect systems from extreme temperatures and interference as well. The team at OnLogic truly cares about creating right-fit solutions tailored specifically to solve unique technology challenges. OnLogic partners with leading software companies like AWS to enable rapid evaluation and deployment of edge computing solutions. Now, for example, OnLogic's line of AWS IoT Greengrass compatible computers has been vetted by AWS, bringing you the peace of mind that will work right out of the box. Now, if you need a computing solution that can be easily configured to your particular needs, supported by industry experts who are just a phone call away, website chat, or even an email away, and delivered to you quickly, the team at OnLogic is ready to help. If you'd rather do it yourself, that's right. OnLogic's easy-to-use website gives you the power to configure and order your next industrial computing device quickly and easily right online. Now, all in-stock online orders are custom-built, thoroughly tested, and shipped in as little as just 5 days. And when you need custom configured industrial computer, edge server, or even a panel PC delivered quickly, OnLogic should be your first destination. To get started and learn more about OnLogic's 30-day risk-free hardware trial, connect with their experts or visit onlogic.com/twit. That's onlogic.com/twit. And we thank OnLogic for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, it's now brings me to my favorite segment of the show here. It's our Santa's wish list for the enterprise. And each of us have comprised a list of things that we wish we had. We've had quite the list here. Now, who wants to go first? Who wants to start the roll here?
Lou, I think you should go first.
I should go first? Okay. So I took a little bit more of a I would say, personal, practical approach to things, because I see a lot of companies, I work with a lot of corporations out there that obviously know that they are in the new norm with hybrid work and remote work. And they know that their network perimeter is changing, and the fact that, they need to extend to more remote locations and even to people's homes. And so that's where, endpoint protection sometimes is a bunch of tools in a tool bag. And so I would say almost that the fact that it's Kung Fu is pretty strong, but there's still a ton of features that are missing. These types of protections, they don't necessarily guarantee prolonged stability and security of your machine. And they don't really necessarily always provide peace of mind for users. So they may be packaged full of features, but there's no one specific endpoint protection package that contains them all. And so here's my kind of list of wish list for, whether you're just on your home device or you're on your machine that you necessarily is attacked or attached to a network. One thing, I wish these services had detection of files that are installed on the machine in any location where the Windows installer normally places them. Meaning, obviously you run a Windows installer, an MSI or an XE that installs files through Windows installer. And then when you go to add and remove programs, you can find the Windows install application. And those files tend to get put in places like system locations or locations that the system only has access to. But if you have other executables that are running that are not taking you through an installer, Windows installer process, they're dropping files in this location, you should be able to detect those things and be able to alert the user and force them to consent. I feel like there's also should be anomaly detection. So if you have new executables that are running on your machine that after a prolonged use of your machine just start running one day, there should also be some detection and some knocking those applications down. Another thing I wish I had was when you install applications a lot, I feel like that once you install the application, you get a catalog of what was installed and where it was installed. That's what Windows Installer does for you. But the fact that you start running an executable and it drops new files in different locations, config files and metadata files and database files somewhere on your machine that could live even if you remove the application, I feel like there should be some way to kind of track dependencies over time. And that should be able to be removed even if you remove the application. I think that's a kind of a table stakes for going forward when it comes to applications. Finally, containment and isolation. I feel like lots of applications installed by a user should be sandboxed by default. And then until somebody who's authorized or a particular role on your machine or your device can go and say, oh yeah, this application is okay. Let it outside its sandbox. Let them use it in a regular environment. And in the same sense, there should also be some kind of level of anomaly detection of when files are being uploaded off the device or exfiltrated from the device, and recognizing, to actually unrecognized locations. So I feel like these things should just be really table stakes for endpoint protection, and they're not. And I feel like these things should be kind of added to some of these systems and these services, maybe even the operating system at some point. So that's my kind of first list. It's a little bit enterprise-ish, deep in the enterprise space, but I feel like this should just be table stakes for these services going forward.
Ryan, Lou, I'm going to agree. I was going to say, Lou, I'm going to agree. I'm going to agree with you. I think that's great, because one of the things that we constantly hear about in the industry is visibility. As you say, knowing what an application brings with it, right? Knowing all of the various files that it puts into a system and where they go, it should be table stakes, because one of the things we know that CISOs, IT managers, security managers aren't able to put their fingers on is exactly how many files have been put on their systems, which application put them there, and therefore which files that might be sitting around are legitimate and which might be malicious. So I think yours is a great wish list item.
Sir, thank you.
And now I'll take another, if it's all right with Brian, I'll go ahead and segue right into mine, which is better UEBA. Now, UEBA is user and endpoint behavior analytics. And here's the thing. As human beings, when we interact with a computer, a system, a network, anything, we have patterns. We have patterns that can be large, like what time we tend to log in. Maybe we, go to work every day at 9 a.m. or within a few minutes of 9 a.m. And we're at work until, let's call it 5:30 p.m. We rarely, perhaps, log in at midnight or 3 in the morning. That's a behavior. That's a pattern. And that kind of pattern can be used to say this is more likely or less likely to be a legitimate user. It goes down to very small things. When you type in your username and password, you do that in a rhythm. There are microsecond differences in the delay between the various characters that you type. And those differences, those gaps, tend to be consistent. And they're also very difficult for someone who is not you to reproduce. So these are user and endpoint behavior analytics. Companies are doing more and more and more with these because they can provide a glimpse into whether, as I said, a user is more or less likely to be legitimate. And there are companies that are beginning to use these analytics as a factor in authentication. Now, what do I mean by that? If you type in your username and password, and according to the analytics, it matches your normal pattern, it's possible that's all that it requires you to do in order to gain access to the system. If those are different, if there's something weird about those, well, then it might ask you for another factor. Maybe it asks you to get a one-time token from an application, authentication application on your smartphone. Maybe it wants to send a one-time token to your smartphone. All kinds of things. I'd like to see better and more consistent UEBA, but it's important that we walk that line, because it's possible to have user analytics that cross the line into invasions of employee or user privacy. And so the really fine balancing act for security is doing better, more complex behavioral analytics without doing user violations. What do I mean by this? Well, there are companies that now have systems that do things like use infrared detectors to know if there is a human being in a particular seat, to know if essentially if a desk is occupied. So if you have an assigned desk at your company and you log in from your normal computer, but you're not at your desk, this could be the sign that there's something wrong, that this is not a legitimate user. But it also gets very intrusive about whether you are in fact at your desk rather than, say, at the employee cafe having a cup of coffee while you check your email, something that could be very legitimate. So it's a balancing act, but I think that as a factor in authentication, it's got a ton of promise that hasn't yet been fully realized.
Now,
I agree. I don't want to take too much time, but I think one thing that I think we should definitely add to the list is some of the, the SIEM stuff, the security information event management. If you can combine those two things together, I feel like that is where you can definitely guarantee a much higher level of security for your organization. Do you see any organizations in the wild trying to combine these two things, Curtis?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. For example, when I went to Splunk's conference in July, they were talking about this sort of thing. And companies are more and more often applying machine learning. Call it AI, call it machine learning, call it deep learning, call it whatever you want, to this issue. And again, the challenge is preventing our use of this technology from getting overly intrusive. We want to make the best use of this for legitimate purposes while recognizing that it is possible to go too far. And so I think that it's critical to be thinking about that now so that we don't end up having to back down from a position in the future.
cool. Well,
right.
Mine's a little on the fluffy side, but
Fluffy.
definitely Christmassy. So, Mr. Ant, could we start off with throwing up that image? This was from the Holiday Matsuri show over in Orlando. And one of the challenges at a lot of trade shows or anything like that is, how do you get a sign up? So let's go through what you would do at, say, a trade show. At a trade show, I'm going to say put a banner up above a booth. The banner's going to cost me, if it's a good sized banner that you could see from across the show venue, that banner is probably going to put me back about $500-$600 to get printed, especially if I've got the company logo and things like that on it. And if I do anything that's specific to that trade show, that's going to be a one-time use banner. Now, think of other things. Like, for instance, say that said, sign up here for emergency relief. Say the guys at FEMA are trying to do something at the Astrodome, but people don't know where to go. Maybe they're trying to get in the wrong door or something. Being able to take, say, a 2 or 3 watt laser, which is, not horribly expensive. We're talking a couple $1,000s, run it off a truck and project on the side of the Astrodome, enter here for emergency relief, or have some signs at the top of an escalator saying, sign up here, company X, this is where you're going. So while these lasers have had their birth at dance parties and discos and so forth, we're starting to see them used at conferences and meetings for temporary signage, because realistically, getting custom printed signage is not cheap. And then renting a snorkel lift or a scissors lift to get it up in the air, or having the union sign guys put it up for you, starts adding up really, really fast. Now, if I need to, so this is Pangolin, which happens to be the one that this lady that did this for us seems to like. It's got all kinds of stuff there. And they will go all, from maybe a couple 100 milliwatts that you'd have to use in a darkened room, all the way up to 1, 2, 3, 4 watts, which start getting into the area of being dangerous, but can be seen in daylight. And then sometimes what some of these people do is they'll throw up a smoke machine and then use the lasers to project against this. I've actually seen them projected from, a truck, and we put direction signs, for where people should be parking. And because it's movement, it attracts the eye, and you can go and more effectively catch the eye of the people that you're trying to inform. I see this as a really, really good emergency relief tool, corporate communications tool, you name it. There's a lot of really cool things you can do. And I think it's a really nice end of the year, enterprise tool for communicating to your employees and customers.
I think so too. Very cool technology. Is it really high resolution? Can you get a really high resolution for visible and bright light and in darkness, or is it more for kind of a dark locations?
Well, in theory, it's for darkened, but if it's up in, say, like the 2-3 watt range, you can see it in sunlight, not necessarily really bright sunlight, but sunlight. There are lasers that are even more powerful, but then you start getting into some things that are dangerous. In fact, one of the higher end lasers that Pangolin does actually has emergency cutoff switches that you can stick all over the place. So if you're doing this for a stage show, you can put emergency off buttons in key places for stage managers and so forth. So there is some caution that has to be used. But like I said, if you're trying to project some direction signage or information on the side of the Astrodome, it's something that can be done very quickly. And the software was not hard to set up.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, we're running low on time. Do we want to go through one more, maybe just a quick round robin of what we have on our list?
I think that's a great idea.
All right, let's start. I'll start. I'm going to go to my last one first because I think this is something that needs to be fixed. Obviously everyone uses email. It's a great tool for 90s people who are even in their 90s. The problem is it just hasn't changed in a long time. It needs a lot more features. I feel like it needs better thread tracking. It needs better auto triaging capabilities. It needs the ability to, have topic management and being able to prioritize your emails based on your organization's hierarchy. It needs better advanced threat protection. It needs to be able to offer better protection for consumers and for organizations. And I feel like, obviously we can triage our emails and be able to pick out spam and phishing emails just by looking at our email because we've trained ourselves to do it. I feel like services should be able to be trained and do that as well. So I feel like email needs to be moving forward. And I feel like that should be on all of our wish lists in the future, because I know that iMessage and Microsoft Teams and Slack are good messaging systems, but people still always go back to email. And I feel like it needs to be improved in the future. That's my next one.
Mr. Kurt? You're muted.
My next one is ubiquitous hardware keys. We've had a company called YubiKey here before, and more companies are offering and asking for little hardware USB connected hardware keys as an authentication factor. As a matter of fact, if you have if you have Amazon AWS cloud storage and you spend a relatively modest amount every month, they'll send you a pile of these for your users. It's a good thing. It's a very easy one. It is more secure than using your smart device as an authentication key. And I think that we should see this used much, much more often.
So This is mine. This one's actually Bluetooth. Sadly, the APIs aren't quite caught up yet, but hey, someday soon. Okay, let's do mine really fast. I've been using these audio encoders and decoders from Barracks Corporation for quite a while. I used it so that I could encode music and have background music at the school's open house, where we had literally 20 or 30,000 school kids coming to see the research facilities. Well, there's some issues. One, we wanted to have a little bit of background music in the outdoor tents and so forth, but we also needed a way that if some sort of emergency happens, God forbid it, an active shooter or a fire or something like that, we needed to be able to have emergency announcements. So I used Barracks, writing over the Wi-Fi. And the cool thing about these is the different units can receive. So the X streamers are the decoders. They can pull data, the audio streams either on unicast, so standard IPv4, and oh, by the way, to talk IPv6, or multicast. So I had mine set up so that I could broadcast to, certain unicast addresses around the school, but I also had an emergency override multicast address. So that if I broadcast at that multicast address, like 224.1.1.1, it would override the background music and allow me to do emergency, announcements, so we could get kids, say, away from a fire or what have you. The interesting thing is they also talk VLANs, and the VLANs they talk are 802.P and Q, 802.1P and Q. So you can actually prioritize, and they can, be slung all over the place. They do make versions that are PoE powered. There are other people that make these devices that also talk 75 ohm. Now, 75 ohm is important because a lot of those old cone-shaped speakers that you see in auditoriums and so forth are 75 ohms. So anyway, that was one of my things. So if you needed to be able to go and put some emergency announcement capability, and oh, by the way, they do have little microphones, and you could put pre-program buttons so you can do announcements in key areas. I'm probably going to use these at the Central Florida Fairgrounds so that we can put announcements even in places like the parking lot.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, my last one on the list is, again, a little bit more, I would say, service-oriented, DevOps-oriented. It's a fact that there's no one turnkey solution for auto deployment and rollback for services. And what I mean by that is you can build your code, you can update your code, and then try to deploy it to your microservices and all the different clusters and all the different regions. But if things go wrong, pulling that code back or instantly switching it off so that your users don't actually see the impact of that, you have no downtime for users, is not available today. You have to build your own custom solutions on every different, depending on what your microservice technology or container technology of choice is, and you have to do a lot of work to get this to be automated. And I feel like there needs to be some more automated solutions, some more solutions that provide the ability to reroute traffic to servers in different regions that are still on older code, so that you can make sure that you can roll back your older code and your new code and make sure that users don't see the disruption. There needs to be more turnkey solutions and more automated solutions out there. I'm sure that there's some startups out there trying to figure this out. I'm sure some of the big dogs out there are trying to figure this out. But I feel like that's the way of the world, and people know that people are moving more towards cloud services and IaaS and containers and microservices. And I feel like there needs to be just better solutions, because organizations spend a lot of money and a lot of time trying to maintain these things. So that's definitely on my wish list. Who knows if that will come soon.
And to round things out, mine is a better and local voice assistant. I love voice assistants. They're handy. They make it easier to interact with systems, But we need two things. We need them to be more accurate and more flexible. And we also need them not to have to send all of your data to some giant third-party corporation in order to be translated from word into action. We've got TensorFlow on Arduinos, for heaven's sake. We can do voice recognition and voice analysis on our smart devices, on our IoT devices, and on our laptop or desktop computers. Let's leave it there. Let's keep our data local, keep our machines talking to us, and finally get ourselves into that voice interface future that the science fiction shows have been promising us for the last 50 years.
One only hopes. Thank you, Curtis. Well, it's amazing how time flies when you're having fun. We hope that our wish list hits home for you as well. And I hope that a little bit of magic in 2023 hopes that we see some of these as well. Well, folks, you've done it again. You sat through another hour of the best dang enterprise and IT podcast in the universe and a year of amazing enterprise news and discussion. So definitely subscribe and tune your podcatcher to our show. But I definitely want to thank everyone who makes this show possible throughout the whole year, and definitely this show, especially my co-host, Brian Chee. Starting with Mr. Brian Chee. Cheebert, what's going on for you in the next couple weeks? I know we'll probably see you in 2023. What do you do in the next couple weeks? Where can people find you and all of your work?
I'm probably going to be cooking. So here's a Christmas present for Adam the Fantub. I bought this at Epcot in France over at the Remy's Great Adventure ride. Adam wanted me to go and buy one. I actually found it on Amazon. It's $25. The keywords I looked for was Remy, R-E-M-Y, shoulder plushie. It was $25. So Adam, Merry Christmas. You wanted one. There you go. Easier than have me pick it up and then mail it to you. If you want to ask me questions, if you didn't catch that and you want a Remy shoulder plushie of your own, catch me on Twitter. I am ADVNETLAB. You'll hear me talking about undersea research. You'll hear me talking about IoT. You'll hear me talking about tinkering. But if you want to ask me, a more private, conversation, you're welcome to throw it at me at email. I am Cheebert, spelled CheeBert @twit.tv. Or if you want to hit all the hosts, feel free to use TWiT @twit.tv. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to hear your ideas. We'd love to hear what you want to see for shows.
Thank you, Cheebert. Great having you here. Well, we also have to thank our very own Mr. Curtis Franklin. Curtis, what's going on for you in the next couple of weeks, and where can people find you?
Well, next week I'm going to be taking it a little bit easy, doing some reflection, doing some cleanup, doing some writing, and getting ready for 2023. I'll try to do some posting on social media. You can find me on Twitter at KG4GWA, on LinkedIn, Curtis Franklin. I'm on Mastodon at KG4GWA at mastodon.sdf.org. Please feel free to follow me and send me messages on any or all of these. I always love it when I can hear from someone who's a member of the TWiT Riot.
Thank you, Curtis. It's great having you guys. I love doing this show with you guys. Well, we also have to thank you as well. You're the person who drops in each and every week throughout the year to watch and to listen to our show to get your enterprise goodness. We want to make it easy for you to watch and listen and catch up on your enterprise and IT news. So go to our show page right now. That's right, twit.tv/TWiT. There you'll find all the amazing back episodes that we do throughout the year, plus the show notes, the co-host information, the guest information, and the links of the stories that we do during the show. But more importantly, next to those videos there, you get those helpful subscribe and download links. Get the show, support the show by getting your audio version, your video version of your choice. Listen on any one of your devices or any one of your podcast applications, because we're on all of them. So definitely subscribe and support the show. Now also remember, give the gift of Club TWiT. That's right. It's a members-only ad-free podcast service with a bonus TWiT Plus fee that you can't get anywhere else, and it's only $7 a month, and you can give it as a gift. There's a lot of great things about Club TWiT. One of them is the exclusive access to the members-only Discord server. I'm on it right now. You can chat with the hosts like us. You can chat with producers. There's separate discussion channels. There's special events. Lots of fun stuff on there. So definitely subscribe to Club TWiT and check it out. twit.tv/Club TWiT. But there's also, Club TWiT also offers corporate group plans as well. That's right. It's a great way to give your team access to our ad-free tech podcasts. Plans start with 5 members at a discounted rate of $6 each per month. And you can add as many seats as you like. It's a great way for your IT department, your sales department, your developers, your tech teams to stay up to date and access to all of our podcasts. And just like regular memberships, you also get access to the TWiT Discord server, and you get that TWiT Plus bonus feed as well. So definitely join Club TWiT at twit.tv/Club TWiT. Now, after you subscribe, impress your family members, your friends, your coworkers with the gift of TWiT during the holiday season, because we talk a lot about some fun tech topics on this show, and I guarantee they will find them fun and interesting as well. So definitely ask them to subscribe and join the fun. But if you're already subscribed and you're available Friday, 1:30 p.m. Pacific time, that's right. We do this show live at live.twit.tv. Lots of great fun on this show. Come see how the pizza's made, the behind the scenes, all the fun stuff before and after the show. So come and watch the show live. Plus, if you're going to watch the show live, you might as well jump into the chat room as well. Our IRC is irc.twit.tv. You can jump into the TWiT Live channel in there and see all the greatest characters, whether it's week in or week out, all the characters in there. Loquacious, Coops, you got Keith 512, Phoenix, you got everyone's in there. So definitely be there. Some new characters each week, and some of the pre-existing characters in there every week. We always get some great conversations there. So definitely join that as well. irc.twit.tv. Definitely hit me up on twitter.com/LeoMem. Also, you can check me out on Mastodon as well. I'm twit.social @LeoMem on there. So definitely hit me up on there. You can direct message me, or whether it's on Twitter or Mastodon, about show ideas. Just want to have conversations, ask questions. I got a lot of great questions recently. How do I get into tech, enterprise? What kind of technologies should I learn for DevOps? Lots of great questions, conversations. So definitely hit me up. Also, you can hit me up on LinkedIn as well. I'm Louis Maresca on there. But if you want to know what I do during my normal work week at Microsoft, definitely check out developers.microsoft.com/office. There we post the latest and greatest ways you can customize your Office experience to make it more productive for you. And in fact, you want to know how productive, go check out the latest contract we have with LSEG, the London Stock Exchange. They are using Office to this extreme cases to customize their experience and change an entire industry of investment banking with Office. So definitely check that out, because they're using our platform. I also want to thank everyone who makes this show possible, especially to Leo and Lisa. Happy holidays to them. They continue to support This Week in Enterprise Tech each and every week, and we couldn't do the show without them. So thank you, Leo and Lisa, for all your support over the years. And I want to thank everyone at TWiT, the staff and the engineers. They make it easy for us. And of course, they support us throughout the year. So thank you for all your support. I want to thank Mr. Brian Chee one more time. He's not only our co-host, but he's also our tireless producer. He does all the show bookings and the playings for the show during his busy days and weeks. So definitely thank him again for all his support throughout the year, because we definitely couldn't do the show without him. And before we sign out, I want to thank our editor for today, Mr. Anthony. Happy holidays to him, because he's going to make us look good after the fact. So thank you, Anthony, for cutting out all the crud. And of course, thank you to our TD for today. He's also the famous and fabulous Mr. Ant Pruitt, who does an amazing show on TWiT called Hands On Photography, which I learn something each and every week from. In fact, I have a couple shows I have to catch up on because I was sick and I've been listening. So thank you, Ant, for all your great content there. What's coming on Hands On Photography this week?
Thank you, Mr. Lou. Well, this week I get into a bit of photography inspiration, because some folks they flat out run out of ideas, and I share what I do to get myself inspired. And your mileage may vary, but that's the fun of it. We can try a lot of different things and get out there and just start shooting some great photographs. twit.tv/HOP.
Thank you, Ant. Well, happy holidays to everyone and a happy new year. And until next time, I'm Louis Maresca, just reminding you, if you want to know what's going on in the enterprise, just keep quiet.
If you are looking for a midweek update on the week's tech news, I gotta tell you, you gotta check out Tech News Weekly. See, it's all kind of built in there with the title. You get to learn about the news in tech that matters. Every Thursday, Jason Howell and I talk to the people making and breaking the tech news, get their insights and their interesting stories. It's a great show to check out. twit.tv/TNW.